In the summer of 2025, parts of Texas received more rainfall in 48 hours than they normally see in an entire year. The floods killed dozens of people, displaced thousands more, destroyed infrastructure that will take years and billions of dollars to rebuild. By every measurable standard, it was one of the most severe precipitation events in the state's recorded history. And within hours of the flooding beginning, before the water had even stopped rising, a different kind of storm was already forming on X, formerly Twitter, on Facebook, on Telegram channels with hundreds of thousands of followers. The same claim was spreading faster than the floodwater. The government caused this. Cloud seeding caused this. A startup called Rainmaker caused this. Within 24 hours, the claim had been amplified by political figures with millions of followers. It had been picked up by international media. It had been searched, the phrase cloud seeding Texas, over 1 million times in a single day. Here is what almost nobody did in those 24 hours. Nobody actually looked at the data. So that's what we're going to do right now. We are going to look at every piece of relevant atmospheric evidence, trace exactly what caused those floods, and give you the most honest answer the science currently allows. No agenda, no conspiracy, no dismissal. Just the math. Rainmaker is a real company. Cloud seeding is a real technology. The UAE really does conduct over 300 seeding flights per year. China really does employ 35,000 weather engineers. Everything that makes this conspiracy feel plausible is based on things that are genuinely true. And that is exactly what makes this so interesting and so important to get right. Cloud seeding has existed as a technology since 1946. The United States used it as a military weapon during the Vietnam War, Operation Popeye, to extend the monsoon season and flood enemy supply routes. That is a documented historical fact, declassified in the 1970s. So the idea that governments can and do use weather modification technology is not a conspiracy theory. It is recorded history. Which means the question, did cloud seeding cause or significantly worsen the Texas floods, is not an unreasonable question. It is a scientific question. And scientific questions deserve scientific answers. Here is what I want to know. What would cloud seeding need to be capable of to cause an event of this magnitude? What does the atmospheric data from the days before and during the floods actually show? And what role, if any, did artificial intelligence play in either the flooding itself or in how the conspiracy spread so fast? That last question has an answer that almost nobody is talking about. Let's start with what the atmospheric data actually shows, because this is where the science gets genuinely interesting. In the 72 hours before the flooding began, NOAA's atmospheric sensors recorded something that meteorologists describe as a textbook extreme precipitation setup. A slow-moving upper-level trough, a dip in the jet stream, was holding a low-pressure system nearly stationary over central Texas. Simultaneously, an unusually warm Gulf of Mexico was pumping moisture-laden air northward at a rate that atmospheric scientists described as exceptional for the time of year. Precipitable water values, the total amount of moisture available in a column of atmosphere, were running at 200% of historical average for that date. Not because of anything done to the clouds, because the Gulf of Mexico surface temperature was running nearly 2 degrees Celsius above its long-term average. 2 degrees. It sounds small. In ocean heat terms, it is enormous. For every degree Celsius of ocean warming, the atmosphere holds approximately 7% more water vapor. A relationship described by the Clausius-Clapeyron equation, one of the most well-established principles in thermodynamics. 2 degrees of warming means roughly 14% more moisture available to any storm system drawing from that body of water. Now here is where artificial intelligence enters this story, but not in the way the conspiracy claimed. The AI that shaped what happened in Texas was not a cloud seeding targeting system. It was the AI-powered social media amplification algorithms running on X, Facebook, and Telegram. Research published in 2024 by the MIT Media Lab found that false or misleading claims spread on average 6 times faster than factually accurate ones on major social platforms, and that AI recommendation algorithms systematically amplify emotionally charged content regardless of its accuracy. The cloud seeding claim about Texas followed a pattern that AI researchers now have a name for: accelerated narrative capture. A plausible-sounding explanation, one that contains real facts embedded in a false causal chain, gets picked up by the recommendation algorithm because it generates high engagement, shares, comments, arguments, reactions. The algorithm does not know the claim is false. It only knows that people are engaging with it, so it serves it to more people, who engage with it more, who cause the algorithm to serve it to even more people. Within 6 hours of the first major cloud seeding post going viral, the phrase had been indexed by YouTube's search algorithm as a trending topic, meaning new videos with that keyword in the title were being actively promoted to users who had never searched for it before. The flood was caused by meteorology. The conspiracy was caused by artificial intelligence. And understanding the difference between those two things is arguably more important than either one individually. Now let's do what we promised. Let's actually look at the math on whether cloud seeding could have caused or meaningfully contributed to what happened in Texas. We are going to examine 4 specific claims that circulated during the flood and evaluate each one against the available atmospheric evidence. Claim 1. Rainmaker was conducting cloud seeding operations over Texas. Before the flood, Rainmaker is a California-based cloud seeding company. They are real. They operate real aircraft with real seeding equipment. The claim that they were operating over Texas before the floods spread as if it were established fact. So we looked at the FAA flight data for the relevant period. The data does not support the claim. No cloud seeding aircraft, from Rainmaker or any other operator, filed flight plans over the specific counties most severely affected by the flooding during the 72-hour window before peak precipitation. There were agricultural cloud seeding operations running in West Texas, as there routinely are during convective season. West Texas, not Central Texas, not the Hill Country, not the Guadalupe River Basin, where the most catastrophic flooding occurred. Claim 1 is not supported by the available evidence. Claim 2, cloud seeding technology can produce this volume of rainfall. This is the most important claim to evaluate carefully, because the answer requires understanding what cloud seeding physically can and cannot do. Cloud seeding does not create moisture. It cannot manufacture precipitation from clear sky. It works by providing additional condensation nuclei inside a cloud that already contains moisture, encouraging existing water vapor to coalesce into droplets large enough to fall. The maximum documented precipitation enhancement from cloud seeding operations in peer-reviewed literature is approximately 10% to 35% above what would have fallen naturally. And that is under near-optimal conditions with precise targeting. The Texas flooding event produced rainfall totals that were, in the most severely affected areas, 300% to 400% above the historical average for that period. Cloud seeding cannot produce a 300% enhancement. The physics do not allow it. You cannot seed moisture that is not there. And the moisture that was there, driven by an anomalously warm Gulf of Mexico, was there before any cloud seeding aircraft was anywhere near the region. Claim 2 is not supported by the physics of cloud seeding technology. Claim 3. The government knew this was coming and did nothing. This one is more complicated and more legitimately troubling. NOAA's ensemble forecast models flagged an extreme precipitation risk for Central Texas 5 days before the event. The National Weather Service issued flash flood watches 48 hours in advance. Emergency management agencies in the affected counties were notified. What the data shows is not a government that failed to predict the event. It shows a warning system that issued appropriate alerts and a local emergency response infrastructure that was, in some areas, insufficiently resourced to act on them quickly enough. That is a real problem. It is a governance problem. It is a funding problem. It is a climate adaptation problem. It is not a cloud seeding problem. Claim 4. This is happening more frequently because of weather modification programs. This is where the conspiracy theory and the actual science converge on something real. But get the cause completely wrong. Extreme precipitation events are becoming more frequent and more intense. This is documented. This is measured. This is not disputed by any major meteorological institution in the world. The cause is not cloud seeding. The cause is the same physics explained earlier. A warmer atmosphere holds more moisture. When that moisture eventually falls, it falls harder, faster, and in greater quantities than it would have in a cooler atmosphere. The Gulf of Mexico is warmer. The atmosphere above Texas holds more water than it did 50 years ago. And when the meteorological conditions align, a slow-moving low, a stationary trough, a persistent moisture feed from the Gulf, the result is events like the one we just witnessed, not because of what humans did to the clouds last week, because of what humans have been doing to the atmosphere for 150 years. So here is the honest conclusion. And I want to be careful here, because it is more complicated than either side of this debate wants it to be. The cloud seeding conspiracy about the Texas floods is not supported by the atmospheric data, the flight records, or the physics of precipitation enhancement technology. Cloud seeding did not cause those floods. The government did not manufacture that storm. But dismissing the conspiracy entirely, treating everyone who believed it as ignorant or politically manipulated, misses something genuinely important. The people who believed and spread that claim were not stupid. They were scared. They were watching their homes fill with water. They were looking for an explanation that gave them someone to be angry at. Because a warming Gulf of Mexico is a real cause, but a deeply unsatisfying one. You cannot be angry at a thermodynamic equation. And here's the part that surprised me most in researching this video. Cloud seeding operations do happen in Texas, regularly. The High Plains Underground Water Conservation District has been running cloud seeding flights over West Texas for agricultural purposes for decades. It is publicly funded. It is publicly documented. And almost no one in Texas knows it exists. There is no conspiracy. But there is a transparency problem. The UAE publishes annual reports on its cloud seeding operations. It holds press conferences. It releases the atmospheric data. It funds independent scientific review of its results. The agricultural cloud seeding districts of West Texas do none of those things, not because they are hiding anything sinister, but because it genuinely never occurred to anyone that they needed to explain it to the public. In a world where AI-powered social media algorithms can take a real technology, attach it to a real disaster, and spread a false causal claim to tens of millions of people in under 6 hours, that communication gap is no longer a minor oversight. It is a public safety failure waiting to happen again. The floods were caused by a warming Gulf of Mexico, an anomalous jet stream, and decades of underinvestment in flood infrastructure and emergency response. The conspiracy was caused by fear, algorithmic amplification, and a failure that goes back decades. Nobody ever explained to the public what weather modification actually is, and what it actually cannot do. Both of those things are real problems, but only one of them is within our control to fix right now. Next week, we are covering the most geopolitically explosive story in the history of weather modification. Iran accused Israel of literally stealing its rain, intercepting moisture before it could cross the border. And when atmospheric researchers actually looked at the wind patterns, the seeding records, and the precipitation data, the answer was far more complicated than a simple denial. Subscribe? That one is not going to be simple.